Welcome everybody to the video on microbes and the environment. So microorganisms are a really important and contributing member of virtually every ecosystem, and they carry out processes that help keep these environments functioning. Not only do they recycle nutrients, but they interact with other organisms in the environment, and they can even be harnessed to solve some pretty big and gnarly environmental problems. So, first up, nutrient recycling. So, microbes are really some of nature's most important decomposers. We often refer to these microorganisms as saprophytes. Let me write that word down because you will hear it again. I'm writing with my mouse, so I'm sorry that this looks like a toddler wrote it. Saprophyte. Okay. And so that's just a fancy word for a decomposer. So they're going to be breaking down dead organisms and wastes, and they're returning nutrients to the environment so that they can be reused. So think about the carbon cycle, the phosphorus cycle, all of those cycles that you've learned about. Um, so we tend to say that they help drive some of the biogeochemical cycles. Right? Isn't that a fancy word? Biogeochemical. And so this includes, like I mentioned, the carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle. And so to kind of elaborate on that a tiny bit, there are some nitrogen fixing bacteria that exist, and they convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms of nitrogen that can be used by plants. Right? Then those plants are going to give off oxygen. We use that oxygen, and the cycle continues. Really pretty cool. With biological pest control, um, this is really snazzy because rather than relying exclusively on chemical pesticides, we can actually sometimes use microorganisms or their products to control unwanted pests. So a classic example is Bacillus thuringiensis, and you do not need to know how to spell that. But Bacillus thuringiensis is a bacterium that naturally produces proteins that are toxic to the larvae of certain insects. And so this has been widely used as a biological insecticide, right? Because the bacterium is not hurting the environment, but just a natural protein that it produces happens to be toxic to the larvae of certain insects that we do not want chowing down on our vegetation. Pretty cool. All right. Last but not least, bioremediation. So this is really neat because it's where, and let me get the highlighter here. We're using living things to remedy a problem, right? And essentially what this means is that we're using microorganisms to remove, to break down, or even transform environmental pollutants into less harmful things. So, for instance, naturally occurring or introduced microbes can actually help degrade petroleum hydrocarbons after oil spills, right? There have been some pretty big oil spills in my day, and there was a lot of panic because that oil was going to disrupt the aquatic ecosystems, right? The plants and animals in there shouldn't be consuming it. It can throw off all sorts of things in that environment. And we found that we can add certain microbes that can start breaking that down and helping to clean up that contaminated environment. So they found that there are certain microbes that can help treat contaminated soil and wastewater. And so essentially, we're putting microbial metabolism to work, cleaning up problems that us humans have made. Y'all can't tell me that's not snazzy. Okay, this is one of my favorite things that microbes do. I think it's pretty cool. All right, y'all, that is it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions.